One of the wealthiest people in the world this last year is a man named Warren Buffett. He also happens to be extremely generous. But Warren Buffett lost $50 billion last year in Berkshire Hathaway. Billion. He's never had such great losses in the world. Warren Buffett is considered also one of the wiser people. I think it costs about around $100,000 just to have lunch with him. But, Warren Buffett, his motto in his life is rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. But Warren Buffett would have to admit, especially after a year like this, that wealth is so uncertain. But where should the people in Ephesus put their hope? Paul tells Timothy to tell them to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. I just love that Paul and God use the word enjoyment here. Yes, God cares about our enjoyment. Remember that this next week. And he tells them, instead, tell them to do good and to be rich in good deeds and generous and willing to share. Sounds a little bit like Chuck Ford's mission sentence. Let's just take each of these ideas by themselves. Tell them to do good. We have many doctors in our congregation and our community, and any doctor or nurse who begins the profession knows that you have to take the Hippocratic Oath. And anyone who has studied medicine or taken the Hippocratic Oath knows the most famous line is do no harm. The Hippocratic Oath was actually written in 275 AD by Hippocrates himself, and it's quite an interesting oath. It says a lot more things. But really, what Paul is telling Timothy here is not, don't tell them to just do no harm. No, tell them to do good. Tell them that their lives are like the great scales of justice outside the Supreme Court, that they must do more good with their life than bad. Tell them to do good. And then he tells them, be rich in good deeds. I love this. The idea is that maybe all of us have savings and checking accounts, and we check out our savings and checking accounts to see how that is, to see our balance statement, but we also have a good deeds checking account. And one of the things that this COVID crisis has revealed is how many billionaires there are in the United States in good deeds. Let me just share with you a story of one of them. This is a picture of Mary, who is a nurse in the Northeast and has served in that community through the height of the COVID crisis. Mary worked on a modest income 5 days a week, but when she wasn't volunteering, she wasn't working on the 6th day, she was coming in on Saturday and volunteering in the hospital. This is her story. She said, I've been a critical care nurse for over 30 years. My education and my training had prepared me well for my career as a nurse. But she says, no college course, textbook, or amount of experience could ever have prepared me for what I was about to encounter as I faced the new reality of this being a COVID nurse. I thought, she said, I was prepared to handle any health crisis, but I quickly realized that I was not prepared for this. She goes on to talk about the number of ways that she was not prepared. She says, lastly, and probably the most profound, is that I wasn't prepared to watch colleagues across the world and healthcare systems we depended on crumble and yet shine under the wrath of COVID. If you know a healthcare worker, she said, give them a hug. They need it. Mary, on behalf of this congregation, we give you a great, big, socially distanced hug. And we want you to know also that God has noticed and that you are richer than Warren Buffett in good deeds. The final thing that Paul tells Timothy to tell his church is be generous and willing to share. Every Thursday I come down to the church, and these days it's usually mostly just me, even though the other staff are coming and going at different times in the day. And the heat is off, so sometimes I feel a little like the character Yuri in Dr. Zhivago with my gloves on my hands writing away at my sermon. But I do think that the children who are right across the hallway in the preschool shared with me one of the most profound ideas this last week as I was writing my sermon. I asked God, give me an image for how to convey the generosity. And I heard the kids in the preschool say, sharing is caring. Sharing is caring. Sharing is caring. I swear it was God's voice from the children to all of us. Sharing is caring. And Paul says that when we share, when we do good deeds, when we do good works, we will lay up treasure for ourselves as a firm foundation for the coming age. In other words, the things that we do, the good deeds we do will last, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life.